KFSR 90.7 FM, and CMAC, Comcast 93 and AT&T 99 present the Central Valley Ledger, formerly San Joaquin Spotlight. Tune in to 90.7 FM or Comcast 93 and AT&T 99. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Welcome to the Central Valley Ledger, formerly San Joaquin Spotlight. And today we're going to talk about a little bit about a lot of things, very important things, with our guest, Genoveva Islas.
Thank you, yes.
Did I get it right?
You did get it right.
I did get it right.
Genoveva is my full name, but most people call me Veva.
Genoveva.
Genoveva.
I'm going to get that by the time the show is done, by the way. And your organization is called Cultiva La Salud?
Cultiva La Salud.
Cultiva La Salud.
Yeah, and it's Spanish for cultivate health.
But I was close.
Yeah, you're very close.
So, before we get into what the organization does, let's talk a little bit about yourself. So,
Sure.
You've been a part of this organization, or the previous organization, this organization turned to for a while. Talk about that.
Sure. So, originally my organization started as the Central California Regional Obesity Prevention Program. And at that point in time, all of the public health directors in the Valley had gotten together, and it was initially funded by the California Endowment. Earlier last year, we did do a rebranding to Cultiva La Salud, but really our efforts and our mission are sort of the same. So we started off as a program that was working in all 8 of the counties around what we call a policy, systems, and environmental change approach. To break that down a little bit, what it means is that there are factors in our lives that really influence our behaviors, where we live, how resources are organized, and laws that govern our conduct about what we can and can't do. And so sometimes there are disadvantages because of these policy, system, and environmental issues that create challenges for people to be able to eat healthy and be physically active. I'll give you some examples of that as I talk more on this, but essentially we wanted to create healthier communities by looking at these factors in our policies, in our systems, and our environments, changing them in positive ways that allow people to practice healthy lifestyles. So in a nutshell, what we want people to do is eat better and move more in order to prevent chronic diseases.
Well, and I have a ton of questions for you, but policy change. I mean, my parents were not born in the United States. And so when you talk to my dad or mom about policy change, they kind of say, whoa, is that even possible? So talk about what policy change means. And do people you encounter think that it's an easy thing to do?
I think that it is a very ominous idea, right? That we change our laws, that we change policies. But let's not think of laws just at the moment. Let's just think about policy with the lowercase p, right? So as an example, we have policies that govern kids being in school. We have policies that govern what the menus are for kids in schools. We have policies in terms of how we design our communities. All of these things create factors in our ability to be physically active and our ability to eat nutritiously. So our efforts really are policy with the lowercase p as well as policy with the big P. And that usually is a statewide policy, some type of legislation. And as an example, a year or two ago, we began to work on a big policy that was about fining traffic infractions around school zones. Why is this important? Many of our kids, I don't know about you, but I used to walk to school every day. From kindergarten to 8th grade, I walked about a mile every day, round trip. And that is a really important asset to having people be able to be physically active just in their normal day-to-day activities. So that's not talking about going to the gym or paying a gym membership. It's just about people being out and walking. And well, for many of our children now, it becomes very difficult for them to walk safely. We have schools with very high student populations. We've located our schools really outside of the center of where neighborhoods are. So people have to travel to get to school. And that results in a lot of people being driven to school, no longer walking. So we're removing that component of physical activity for a lot of children. But for those few children that do walk, we're also creating a very dangerous environment with all of the automobile traffic around the school zone. And with technology and people being on their phones, there's a lot of distracted driving. There's people rushing to drop kids off at school so that they can get to work. And so the thought was, let's find that dangerous behavior that poses risk to our children. It was a flat fee. Not to get too much into the weeds about the policy, essentially, that's an example for me of trying to address at sort of a statewide level an issue that creates a barrier to children's ability to walk on a daily basis.
Well, and let's take the walking on a daily basis. So when I go to my doctor knows if I'm walking or I'm not walking. You know, I hurt my lower back recently and it feels better, but you know, my doctor said, are you stretching and are you walking? So my family and I walk in the evening. So something like that. How does a simple walk at the end of a day, a simple 20, 25 minute walk, how does that impact what you're trying to do?
It is a lovely idea for everybody to walk in the evenings. And what you're doing with your family just has so many more benefits than just your personal health, right? It's impacting your family's health. It's strengthening your emotional health with your family as well. But so let me give you an example. Many communities that we work with are lower income. There are lower income communities that often don't have a lot of amenities to them. So they're not a lot of parks where people can safely recreate. Oftentimes they're places that don't have sidewalks or streetlights. So they don't have that opportunity to just take a 20-minute walk, right? Their 20-minute walk turns into running away from a loose dog or being scared of some nefarious characters that are, lurking in the dark. So it has tremendous benefits. I think if all of us would be able to walk, exercise, do some type of moderate to vigorous physical activity, it would add a lot of value to your personal health, and it would help create protective factors that would prevent you being at risk for a chronic disease later in life.
Obesity. We hear the term all over the place. It's everywhere. A couple of questions regarding obesity. How healthy is our community? And by community, I mean not just Fresno County, but the Valley.
Yeah.
Taking the Valley as one.
Yeah. I think it is really ironic that we grow all of the fruits and vegetables that we should be eating to stay healthy. But the truth is that many residents don't have access to those fruits and vegetables. And for many of the reasons that I've mentioned to you, our communities really aren't designed in a way where everybody has an opportunity to be physically active and recreate every day. And let me just pause here to say that I think we have spent a lot of time in public health reinforcing the idea that as an individual, we have to be responsible for our behaviors and that it's all about willpower to eat healthy and you have to have the drive to get up and jog, 5 miles a day in order to be fit. And the truth is, being healthy shouldn't be hard. Being healthy should be the easy choice. We have just engineered health and healthy lifestyles out of our day-to-day lives, and we really need to get back to that. So we live in a place that grows all of these amazing fruits and vegetables. We have vast expanses of land, and yet 1 out of every 3 children in the Valley is overweight or obese. Some of our counties have upwards of 70% of their adult population being overweight or obese. And then when we begin to look at obesity-related illnesses, the Central Valley has some of the highest indices for diabetes, for heart disease, and certain types of cancers that are related to obesity as well. So, it's really a shame that we, in this abundance of produce that we're growing, that we aren't making it more of the center of our lives, that our environments are really driven around an economy that's agriculture, but not necessarily around the values of good nutrition and good health.
Talk a little bit about, in talking about produce and vegetables, I saw a press release that came out that you're starting a school project.
Yeah.
Before I don't want to do the talking about it. I want you to tell our audience about it.
Well, I love the opportunity. So some time ago, we began to look at how do we help change these environments? How do we begin to make the healthy choice the easy choice? And part of that has to be about making greater access to fruits and vegetables easy in our communities. So one opportunity that really came about through some collaborative thinking with residents was the idea of establishing school farm stands. So school farm stands, and in the example that you're referring to, we've just launched this year 2 school farm stands that are operating at Lane Elementary and Vang Pao Elementary. It's a partnership with the National Hmong American Farmers, and Fresno Unified School District has been a tremendous partner, as well as the principals at both these schools that I've mentioned. So what these school farm stands do is the farmers are able to come onto campus at the periphery of the school, and they basically set up tables and they have a display of produce that's available. The schools have volunteered to announce to their students that when the produce stands are operating, so the kids can come and they can avail themselves of produce, strawberries, cherries. There are a variety and seasonality to what's available, but parents picking up their kids can also stop by and get produce that can then be incorporated into their dinner that evening. And, there is some ability for residents who live around the periphery of that school to also be able, after school hours, to get access to that same produce. They're accepting cash as well as EBT, so it's an asset for low-income residents who can utilize their CalFresh dollars to buy produce at these school farm stands.
And when the farmers bring the produce to the campus, is there a negotiated rate? I mean, can they charge whatever they want, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's not been an issue because NAF totally, the National Hmong American Farmers, totally is on board with the idea that what we're trying to do is promote health. So we don't want them to sell at a price point that bars people from consuming it because, again, we're trying to change the dynamics. We're trying to make the healthy food the easy, affordable food items for people to get. So it has been extremely affordable in terms of what they're selling. And then with the addition of accepting the electronic benefits transfer, you don't necessarily have to have cash. You can use your EBT card to make the transaction as well.
What are the farmers saying? I mean, is this, it works great for the students and the parents and the families because it makes things easy.
Yeah.
You go to pick up your child and, hey, you know what? I need to pick up some corn or I need to pick up some lettuce.
Yeah, jalapeno, cilantro. Yeah.
So what about the farmers? What are they saying?
Yeah, so NAF is an aggregate of farmers, and so they're able to collect produce from them. And they are very interested in these new markets to introduce their produce into small scale. So they're small farmers, they're not big, mega producing farmers, and they really do need more of that local market access. And in fact, we have about 3 more school sites that are ready to implement school farm stands. So we would have a school farm stand theoretically operating every day of the week. And our only challenge at this point is having enough manpower to operate school farm stands. So NAF are farmers, right? They need to be farming. They can't be away from their fields every day of the week. So we're in the process of developing some relationships with students, like either at Fresno City, Fresno State, that may be interested in some community service opportunity here. So it gives them an opportunity to interact, have some real-world experience with produce sales, and it's a valuable service to the community.
Why should people care about this? Say that you've got someone that says, going back to the willpower, I'm eating right, I'm exercising, I'm making time for it. Why should we care about all these other factors?
Yeah. So, one thing that I didn't mention when I was talking about this earlier is that there is a really alarming trend, in particular for communities of color and low-income residents. And part of the issue is, again, when you're in a low-income neighborhood, that the majority of food you'll find, in fact, let me back up to say that some of our target locations are places like Southeast Fresno, the city of Orange Cove, other rural communities like that. And when you go into these neighborhoods, what you find is that there is an over-availability of unhealthy foods, from liquor to chips to sodas. all of the stuff that we know people shouldn't be eating on a regular, everyday basis, every meal, right? And so the fight that we're facing with obesity and chronic disease is a fight against an unhealthy food choice for every meal. It's a fight against sedate lifestyles, right? And when you begin to peel away that onion and find out, like, why are all of these unhealthy decisions being made, what you see is really the context in which they're happening. So if you live in a place where there is no full service grocery store, where you can't buy produce, that's a factor. Maybe it's also a factor in the fact that the produce that exists is poor quality, so you're not really appealing. That's not appealing for you to eat. Right. Or the fact that it may be decent quality, but it's set at a price point where you can't really afford to buy, 5 fruits and vegetables for your family for every week, right? So all of these things we need to chip away at. We need to chip away at making sure that what the healthy item is what's ubiquitous everywhere. We need to make sure that it's completely affordable, whether that means people paying lower in cash or being able to utilize some of their nutrition benefits like CalFresh. So I think that you and I probably have no issue with being able to go to Whole Foods, right? That has this wonderful display and wonderful assortment. But I don't think that we should assume that everybody has the same access that we do. And the truth is that they don't. And the truth is, when you begin to look in these lower income neighborhoods, not only is healthy food scarce, opportunities for you to be physically active are also scarce. Southeast Fresno, as you know, there's been a lot of discussion about the limits in park space that's there. But there's also issues in terms of the infrastructure. There was a study that I read once that Southeast Fresno has one of the highest incidences of pedestrian injury and fatality. Yeah, but we also live in a place that's ranked very highly in terms of its bicycle infrastructure and sidewalks if you look at North Fresno, right? So there's this vast expanse of a bike trail system. That bike trail system basically stops. McKinley has a small trail that doesn't really go anywhere, but south of that and west of Fresno, there really isn't anything like that. So I think when you begin to see that difference, you can easily recognize how there's an unfair disadvantage for certain segments of our community, and then it becomes no guess as to why they're suffering from a higher rate of obesity or a higher rate of these chronic diseases.
So the people that your organization tries to help on the ground, what are they saying about this? I mean, do they realize that there are all these challenges? I mean, or I imagine that, their life, like you and my life, busy. You've got, one thing after another, one thing after another. So are they realizing this, or what is their perception?
Yeah. I mean, I think that some of these issues are very intuitive, right? Like we talk to some of the moms and they'll say, yes, it's very expensive for me to be able to afford produce. And there are realities, there are hard choices that people are having to make, right? Like either spend more so that we can have a salad at every meal, or I can buy more by buying cheap foods. And so there's economic reasons why the unhealthy choice often becomes the more practical choice in their diets, right? So I think, when we engage them, we ask them, how easy is it for you to eat healthy? How easy is it for you to be physically active? And that's when we begin to hear all of these issues, from not having a safe place to be physically active, to the prominence of loose dogs in their neighborhood, to the fact that they don't feel comfortable allowing their children to walk or bike to school, that they themselves don't feel comfortable to walk or bike in their neighborhoods. And at that point, one of the tactics that we've tried to use is to involve residents in our assessments. So these assessments that I mentioned to you about the food environment, we had residents walking alongside of us. The CX3 assessments looked at things not just about was there produce within the store, but it looked at the price points of that produce. And we were able to make comparisons of the price points of produce in Southeast Fresno to other places. And we were also able to look at things like the walkability to the store, the density of fast food restaurants, the amount of unhealthy food advertising in the community. And when community residents have gone through that exercise, then it really becomes very impactful, like, oh my God, yeah, I never really noticed all of this. I think our nature as human beings is that we adapt to the environments where we're at. And so obesity is not unusual in the environments that we have created. It's the normal response to living in an obesogenic environment. And so what we then do at that point is that we identify where are their priorities, what do they want to work on first, and then we'll talk to all of the policy system and environmental factors that contribute to that challenge. And we begin to create an action plan with them. Who are the decision makers that can help? Let's begin to advocate and talk with them about the changes that we want. And so like the school farm stands resulted from part of that process. Our efforts to work on joint use, unlocking the school gates to create safe places to play, were part of those community conversations and dialogues.
Well, and so let's talk a little bit about if you have a family that says, okay, I've listened to your organization, I know that this is good for my family. Where do they start? So what would be your advice to someone with 2 kids who says, you know what, you're right, I'm not living the life that I should be living, the healthy life, I should say.
Yeah.
Where do I start?
There are a lot of organizations like ours that are trying to create healthy communities. The BHC effort here in Fresno is another example. So I think that there are plenty of points of connections that residents can do to be part of a movement to create change. And certainly when we think about the changes that need to happen, they're not often in our individual control. They really are at the control of decision makers. And so we need residents to be able to speak, to talk about what their challenges are, but to also be vocal about the type of solutions that they want to see in their communities. So as an example, with our grant, we have purposely engaged residents. We try to do interactive activities. So the assessments was an example. Another example is that we've organized group bike rides in Southeast Fresno. We call them cumbia rides. So we're playing, you know, Latin music in the background as we're riding the bike, and they become very fun, engaging. But those cumbia rides become educational opportunities where we can teach biking safety. They become focus group opportunities where we can hear back from residents about what that experience in riding was like and what type of additional assets they would like to see in order to feel comfortable in biking and allowing their children to bike. So I think there's examples like that where families can become involved in joining this movement for a healthier community. And then I think, like on your own, there's no reason why parents can't become more involved in their school settings. A lot of the changes in the school level, because of the new formula for funding, there are a tremendous amount of opportunities where parents can influence what's being made available on their child's menus, as well as what type of amenities are available to help them with their physical activity.
Sounds like there's a lot of work to be done.
There is a tremendous amount of work to be done. One startling statistics that I read was that as of 2010, half of all Latino and African American children will develop diabetes in their lifetime.
Wow.
That's half, right? That's shameful. There should be absolutely no reason why everyone is not able to live the full course of their life in optimal health. And so it is alarming. It is something for people to be concerned of, and it is something that we as a society and as a community should work together to change. Something
where, I've seen out at community events is Zumba. And so my question is, Zumba, when I see them dancing out there, they're having fun. Is that fun. Exercise?
It's fun, and yeah, it is exercise. And see, that's the thing too. There's no reason why physical activity should be labor, right? Like it should be fun. You should be able to ride a bike, with the wind in your hair and have fun in the experience. And so things like Zumba, things like folkloric dance, these are all movements. These are all opportunities to expend calories and to be healthy. So we have seen a lot of interest around Zumba. We're organizing in Orange Cove what we call bailoterapia, which Zumba is a trademarked name, right? So bailoterapia is the same idea, like using Latin beats and Latin music to get people moving in a rhythmic way as a form of fitness. How can people find out more information? Because we're running out of time, believe it or not, on the program. But
How can people find out more information about this organization, and why should people listening to this program care? I mean, why should someone who's watching this or listening on air say, you know what, this is the way my parents have been, this is the way my family has been, and so why should they change if it's unhealthy?
You know, there's a lot of personal decisions we make every day. But the idea of increasing access to healthy food is something that we should all care about. I mean, it's our family, it's our neighbors, it's our future in terms of our children. If we want to be productive, if we want to have a strong economy, all of this requires having healthy people, right? Our military requires having healthy people. So all of those things, from our education to our workforce to our military, require us being healthy. They all affect us. So we're all affected when we have such a large proportion of the population that's unhealthy. So I think, you know, people support this in a number of ways, from voting with their dollars to purchasing and supporting our locally grown food, to also recreating and being out there in parks, walking, biking, to create more of a physical activity culture.
Well, and so any advice you would give for people listening or watching? So
definitely, I know we're running out of time. I would just say that please be in contact with us. We're Cultiva La Salud. We have a website, www.cultiva la salud. We're on Facebook and on Twitter. And there are a number of community events that we're hosting that people can join us at.
Thank you so much for coming on the program this week and educating us. I think, you know, and well, I wish we had more time. I'd ask you some more questions about misconceptions and stuff, but next time.
For sure. Thank you.
That's all for this edition of the Central Valley Ledger, formerly San Joaquin Spotlight. Thank you to our guest, Miss Islas.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
You did get it right.
Very nice. Thank you for educating us about this. Thank you to our volunteer crew members that make this production possible. They're in the studio now making us look and sound good. So thank you for that. To our audience members listening to this broadcast on KFSR 90.7 FM, thank you. Hope you enjoyed the program. And to those watching on Comcast 93 and AT&T 99, thank you as well. Hope again you enjoyed another edition of the Central Valley Ledger. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Tune in next week to a new edition.